Welcome back to the Make Time for Success podcast. This is episode number 64. My friends, this episode is a fun one. Not only are you going to hear about all sorts of issues like overcoming nervousness and worry, developing self-trust, and principles of improving your productivity and actually taking action, but you're also going to hear about ice cream and puppies. Why? Because in this episode, the tables are turned and Danya Douglas-Hunt, my special guest on the last episode, episode number 63, and this episode is interviewing me. It's a little bit of a change in my style of setting up these podcast episodes, but this experiment really worked. We thought we would get to know each other more while enabling you to see a little bit more closely about how I think, how I feel, and who I am. I appreciate Danya's kindness in offering to do this interview with me. And I want to make sure you listen to episode number 63 too, where I interviewed Danya about her work and her experience as a former Olympic athletic trainer and strength and conditioning coach, and as a multi-passionate entrepreneur. She's so talented, so skilled, such an effective coach and leader. And this episode is so much fun. I'm grateful to have had this chance to do 2 episodes with her. Let's go listen to this interview now. Hi, I'm Dr. Christine Lee, and I'm a psychologist and a procrastination coach. I've helped thousands of people move past procrastination and overwhelm so they could begin working to their potential. In this podcast, you're going to learn powerful strategies for getting your mind, body, and energy to work together so that you can focus on what's really important and accomplish the goals you want to achieve. When you start living within your full power, you're going to see how being productive can be easy and how you can create success on demand. Welcome to the Make Time for Success podcast.
Hello. Welcome to the podcast. You might be listening and being like, whose voice is this? This is not the normal voice. And you'd be right, because here's the thing. I did a podcast with Dr. Christine earlier, and I'm like, we got to do one about you, and we have to highlight you. So we have flipped the roles here a little bit, where I get the privilege to introduce and get to know Dr. Christine even more. So how are you doing today, Dr. Christine?
Thank you, Danya, for being here. This is Christine Lee talking to Danya Douglas-Hunt, who was so kind to give me a beautiful episode, just the one before this one. And she had the lovely idea of working together in this way. I got immediately nervous by the idea, but then I immediately said this will be a great opportunity because of what I know about Danya and her skills and her wonderfulness and her attitude about this kind of work of personal development and bringing the best out of people. So thank you, Danya, for being here.
You're so welcome. And this is fun because we've kind of talked about a few questions, but really this is just going to be just a real conversation about getting to know you more. And I'm already going to go somewhere. So I'm going here, but so I'm curious what was the nervousness about being asked to really talk about you on the podcast? What came up for you?
I think nervousness is just a general programmed habit that I have.
Yeah.
And I have learned to just get over that nervousness as quickly as possible over the years. And certainly I was not like that before. I used to just be nervousness all the time.
Yeah.
But I kind of I do get excited when I feel nervous these days, because I feel like, it's just something I haven't gotten really experienced about. It's something new for me. It's something I'm going to have to consider and dig deeper into myself to do.
Yeah.
And then I just gather myself together and then I go and I say yes. I oftentimes will say yes.
I love that. And it's so beautiful too. We kind of opened up here because how many times do we get asked things or opportunities, playing it back to the audience? Think of yourself in this situation where the nervousness comes and then it's a stop and it's a no, versus what you've done is you've reframed it. And it's beautiful because to the body, excited and nervous, there's no difference. It's just how we label it. It's just energy in our body. So it's beautiful because you have a choice to feel the nervousness and okay, honor it, see it, and then still say yes and move forward, or feel it and then shut down and stop. And then, like, where does that leave us of not exploring opportunities potentially? So I love it. Yeah.
I want to follow up with that and just say that to be a little more honest about that nervousness, I feel that the initial nervousness is always associated with, I'm going to somehow underperform or underdeliver or not be how I'm supposed to look or something like that. And those thoughts, I think, are pre-programmed as well, ingrained, very old parts of the Christine Lee system. But those are things that I've had to work through and get over as well. And even if I'm feeling that in the current day, that those things are not completely worked through, I still have to get over that and collect my resources and say yes, oftentimes, which is just a wonderful path to be on. You go through all the different feelings and you still say yes. It's okay. It always ends up being okay.
Yeah. And again, what a beautiful highlight too. Regardless of level of knowledge and success and who you are as a person, we're all human to have these thoughts or these, like, the inner critic that comes up, or the thoughts of like, the doubts. Everyone experiences that. No matter who you are, what level you're at, what you do for work, everyone experiences that. And I think just to highlight to your listeners, like, that's normal. And you still have a choice to honor and okay, what's coming up, and challenge those thoughts or uncover, do I got to do some work here, and still be able to move forward. Like, that stuff doesn't just go away the more knowledgeable and successful you become. In fact, they come in different ways. So it's just nice to almost have permission to be like, yeah, everyone has these thoughts, and you can choose how to navigate them, uncover them, work through them, and still say yes and move forward.
I also noticed that these collections of nerves and nervousness also happen, especially when you're about to elevate your game in some way. So expect that. I agree with Danya. Everyone who's listening, make this part of just your toolkit, that you're going to anticipate that you're going to have some rocky feelings sometimes, but that those feelings are not going to distract you from your end goal.
Yeah. So I got to throw in some brain stuff here. I know we're kind of on the same page, but like, that is so key. We did an episode on this earlier, so maybe I won't go too much into it, but the brain's job is to like keep us safe and be able to predict things. And what happens outside, or where do our goals lie? It's like all outside of our comfort zone. It's change. It's different. Our brain can't predict it. So just like you said, Christine, where you experience these nerves, expect them to come up even louder, even more around right when you're about to up level, right when you're about to jump into an opportunity, because just that's how the brain's wired. It doesn't know what to anticipate. It's not something you've done before necessarily. And so it's going to like try and do everything it can to keep you to what it knows in your comfort zone. And so you get a choice, and you get to use that as oh my gosh, this is a good sign. I'm about to up level. I'm about to learn something. I'm about to grow, and use that self chatter as like a good indication of that comfort zone. Or what most people tend to do, because they're just not aware of it, is they hear it and they just like keep backing down or staying in their comfort zone. So just that reframe, different perception. This is such a, like, how many people can relate to this? Let's be real. This is a good opening conversation to dive into real nerves and stuff,
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let's get into what we really came here to talk about, was you. And I just want to get to know you more. So what I'd love to know is, this question can sometimes just be so broad, but what really is your why, Christine? What really got you into doing this work? What gets you out of bed? Like, just, can you share a little bit about your story or your why, and anything about what you'd love your listeners to know a bit more about you?
Okay. Thank you for that beautiful question. I would say I no longer have trouble getting out of bed. And again, that was not always the case. I used to be so sleep deprived that it was almost impossible to feel like I could get out of bed. It was that severe an issue. And I was so discombobulated with life, chores and tasks and scheduling and responsibilities that I was a rolling mess. And I don't know that my podcast listeners or other people know that much about that part of my life. Unless you're in my close circle of friends and family, you probably haven't seen that. And I'm grateful that that's part of my life, but also part of my past, because it's way easier to just feel like you're waking up with spirit, with purpose, with happiness, and with a sense of calm. And that calm can certainly get destroyed by anything within a few minutes. But that's life. It's not how I'm emerging into the day anymore. And I feel like that is independent of how much sleep I'm getting, that I'm feeling good in my heart and in my mind and in my body. And that has been a process. So that is how I wake up in the morning. But my why really has to do with something about energy and helping people and helping myself in the process to avoid waste. And I was debating whether to use that word, but I do think there's something about that and my own history that I spent so many years wasting my skills, my chances, my time, my energy, that now that's a shorthanded way for me to just say, like, my whole key to doing things is let's reduce the waste. Let's reduce the waste of thought, worry, energy, effort, over planning, overthinking, all of that stuff. And that's really central to how I live and how I teach people and how I see things, how I see problems that people will bring to me, because oftentimes there's resistance, there's some sort of waste, there's some sort of distortion in how we're doing things. It's innocent, as you so kindly noted earlier on this interview. And that's why we need each other. That's why there are coaches and therapists and podcasts, because we need to borrow other people's experience and other people's energy and other people's wisdom in order to fix our own areas of waste and despair and stress and struggle.
Yeah. And this might be obvious to some people, but in doing so, in really helping others, like you said, reduce waste, of whether it's thought or energy, what does that enable that person to do? Or what does that make it possible for other people?
I think it makes everything possible. Yeah. I think that's the short way of describing it. And my first thought was that it enables the brain to operate in its fullest capacity, that the brain is able to just come up with the raw material that you can use, that comes up with that on the spot response to a question that you've never heard before, to come up with the thing that really reflects your opinion without embarrassment, shame, any other layers of, oh, I need to be impressive. Oh, I need not to have ums and ahs and likes and knows. All of those things. And these are things that you can learn. And so that's the excitement for me, is that I can be a teacher of those principles, that I could support people and train them and work with them until that freedom is achieved. And then to see, the light bulbs going off, the improvement in functioning, the ease of life, the better complexion, all of those things, all those signs that people are in flow with themselves and in their own system and with their world. That's definitely my why.
I love it. I love it. And something you said earlier for you when you first opened up the conversation was how things used to be and then how they are now, like how you've been able to master in yourself. What was really the changing or defining moment for you, if there was one? So you said you woke up kind of with low energy and kind of in different frames of mind. And then now it's like things have totally changed and totally shifted. What was that changed for you? Was there an event or an experience? You're just like, I'm sick and tired of my own crap. Like, what was that?
I was not sick and tired of my own crap, because I just thought this was me. So it was very frustrating. Don't get me wrong, but I just was just like, well, this is how I do things. And so I can't be that upset about it, because this is how I do things. And then some of my listeners will have heard the story before, but I was working at a university college counseling service, and one of the deans at the university requested a procrastination workshop. I volunteered for it, not knowing what I was volunteering for, really, and then did the research for it and realized, oh my God, this isn't my personality or my style. It just is a set of habits that I can change, that I can fix, that I can heal from, and then not have this issue be a burden for me anymore. So I was both learning it, teaching it, and recovering from it in the same space of time. And that really was the transition moment. I think from that point on, I knew, wow, the world is wide open for me as long as I can stay on this course. And it's just like going to therapy. Once you're in a little bit, you're not going to ever doubt that it's a good path for you. So I've been on that path ever since, really kind of obsessed with concepts of self-improvement, life improvement, energy improvement, learning, because now I'm not spending the entire day doubting my own abilities.
So tiring. Yeah. That's so beautiful. And I love how that came up for you in such a unique and an unassuming way too, but really to recognize, oh my goodness, this doesn't have to be how it is. I can actually change this. There's nothing wrong with me. There's just some habits or there's ways of thinking or things I've picked up that I think is what it is, but it's like, no, actually you can completely change your life. And it does require work and effort and intention. However, on the flip side of that, now look at what's opened up for you and how you live your life and what you get to teach other people. So beautiful. Okay. I want to ask this one what do you wish more people knew about you?
I don't necessarily wish this, but I think a lot of people don't know just my lighthearted, goofy, fun-loving side. I think there's the whole online phenomenon of how you're showing up. And I think, I think it doesn't, maybe it's just how I'm playing the online game, but I don't think I've revealed that much about that part of myself to my audience, to people on Instagram or anything like that. And that is really how I live my life as well. Just really looking for fun, ease, joking around, poking fun at myself, self-deprecation, all of that stuff, and making light of things. I think people have said that my style of teaching is really generally just like lighten up everyone because we're taking this all way too seriously. So that is something that I think is helpful, but also something that I would want people to know about me, that I'm not all serious and work, even though I work a lot. I really like play and movies and joking and eating and dancing, all these fun things of just seeing where your spirit can take you.
I love it. I love it. And it's fun because I think you and I are someone that way where we take our work very seriously, but we don't take life or ourselves too seriously. Like change work and the deep inner work can still be enjoyable, even though you're going through some massive up-leveling and awareness. Like it still can be fun and it still can be done with a tune of enjoying it and lightheartedness. Like it doesn't have to be this heavy, deep, hard stuff all the time. So I love that. And I can't wait to see more of that side of you even shine through if it can.
Well, thank you. I think you've given me the instruction to do that and the space to do that here even. And I'd say in watching your work, I think you're a ton of fun. It's very apparent. And that you're free and that's part of your message is that, we're going to get there and we might as well be choosing the route that fits well with us and makes things easier for us. And I also feel like when we assume that things need to be heavy, they become heavy. And that again can be that waste area where now you're carrying twice as much of a load to the finish line. I just think we all like to pack lighter once we've actually experienced that on a real like cross country trip. That first time when you show up, I remember going to a border officer and she commented that my party was really lightly packed and we were just flying through the entire trip because of it. So it really was a different experience. And I think the same works for the mental load that we're carrying. We have control over that and we have a lot of responsibility to, I think, go lightly when we can.
Totally. I love that. Yeah. Like how many of us are carrying around, let's use like the metaphor, the baggage, right? Of the doubts, the limiting beliefs, the heaviness, the worries of what people think about you. But then when you really truly step into who you authentically are and you're not hiding and you just get to be yourself, it is like this massive weight you just lift off. And it's like people get to know you for who you are versus who you think you should be. Right. And there's this huge thing of like fear of judgment and comparison and There's even like cancel culture out there. But I just find when you show up more as yourself, you attract the right people to you. The people who like I'm very silly, I'm very goofy, and that doesn't work for everyone, but that's going to work for the people who are like, oh, I can do the work and still have fun and laugh at the same time. And it kind of comes back to this whole thing around not being the same type of ice cream. Like not everyone loves vanilla. Not everyone loves, I don't know, cookies and cream. Like there's a variety of flavors for a reason. So to truly be your true authentic self and have fun in your expression and just be light with it, you're going to attract people who want your type of work and your style too. So
absolutely. I agree. And I do not like vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, some chocolate sauce and some sprinkles. And like, give me
Yeah. And I think that's a reason why we connected is like, we're both essentially fun-minded and get along easily.
I love it. Okay. So can we change a little bit to the tune of when you work with your clients, maybe let's start with this. Is there a certain like a dream client where if someone was listening, they just stumbled across your podcast for the first time, how would they know that they would be a really good fit to work with you? Like, do you have a dream client where you're like, this is the type of person I typically work with or who would excel the most? Is there anything that comes to mind when you think of your dream client or who, like, how would people know like, oh, that's perfect for me. That's who I need to work with?
I think that was my heart response is that if they're feeling it in their mind, heart experience that, wow, that just feels like something that would be comfortable and safe for me, that I trust that even without meeting Christine in person, I feel like that's a person that I oftentimes don't necessarily have to do the pre-work because by the time they've called me, they already know a little bit about our connection.
Yeah.
And I have certainly worked with people as the person who has reached out because of a vibe that I've heard on a podcast or on Instagram, something like that, because I feel safe already. And so that's certainly a dream client. And I like people with non-traditional brains. And by that, I mean, not necessarily the linear, hyper-organized type. I certainly can and will work with the hyper-organized type, but I like people who are kind of creative, see things a little bit differently than other people, might feel awkward about that or somehow out of place because they think differently.
Yeah.
And I just think I might have that kind of brain myself. So I kind of resonate and can understand a brain that maybe might be frustrating to some other therapist or coach. That tends to be something that I've noticed. And I like people who are up for a mindset shift.
Yeah.
Anybody who's kind of looking for growth, looking for change, doing the courageous work, willing to listen. Absolutely. So I like working with entrepreneurs and students who are in that growth process that naturally there's this opening up and strengthening of will and purpose and going with them to see what's going to come of this. We don't know. And I like seeing people over time because you see the ease and the benefit and the growth.
Yeah, I love that. It's right. There's like almost like when you work with someone too, there's like the learning phase of like becoming aware and uncovering things. And then there's like the implementation phase. And then then life happens and then there's pitfalls and there's backstepping. So it's like, I'm the same with you. I like to work with someone for a period of time because there's this natural flow of learning, a bit of uncovering, a bit of forward, a bit of backward, sideways, but the whole flow is forward. And I would agree too. I think a lot of the qualities you said too, it's like, I didn't fit in. I'm not someone who's like type A who has to be in this box. And I was made wrong a lot of the time to feel like, what's wrong with me? What's different? Like I'm multi-passionate. I love a lot of things. My brain thinks in different ways. And for the longest time, I thought because I didn't fit into that box or I didn't see a representation of an entrepreneur who was multi-passionate or kind of thought like I did, or I thought it was wrong. And so it's really refreshing to hear when other people speak of like, oh yeah, my brain kind of thinks like this, or this is how I operate. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm not alone. And yes, okay, cool. Like you can understand how I work and working with you too. So, and it's not to say right or wrong. It's not to say, it's just how we work, how we function. And some people work really well. Type A, schedule, linear thinking, amazing. Some people don't. They're more abstract. It's just finding the support that suits you and works well for you, I think is the general theme of that. So
yeah, I think as coaches, we also need to be thinking kind of in some ways all the directions simultaneously. So it can help to have that kind of flexibility and not be afraid to expand. I'll share with you one of the very first piece of excellent supervision I had as a trainee, early young trainee, younger person, was my supervisor at the time told me that as a person in training, a goal could be that I would be able to experience all the feelings. And I was younger at the time, pretty young, pretty emotionally immature and underexperienced. And so that piece of advice gave me the freedom to say, oh, everything's game now. I actually can experience these things. I can start expressing the things I had been suppressing. And that piece of advice has really guided me throughout my years of practice, because that can be shared with everyone. So everybody who's listening here today, don't be afraid of the new feeling, because that's just another piece of information and another door for you to step through. And we don't have to keep these feelings if they're not serving us, but that it's safe to have them be registered in your body and your mind and experience, because it's just information that's for you, meant for you, and real.
Yeah, I love that. It's so beautiful, because how many people don't allow themselves to do that? And then again, it's thinking of like, what are we missing out on learning? What are we missing out on possible opportunities because we're just trying to fit in a certain way or, hide certain things. So it just enables you to live life more fully, really, and really get to know who you are too. So, beautiful. Okay, Christine, what would you say? So you've worked with so many clients and you have like an expertise and background in like self-belief, ways to make things easier, perfectionism, ADHD, ADD, procrastination, productivity, anxiety, just to name a few, right? It's obviously about helping the person up level. What would you say are the common pitfalls you see that your clients are making, but that aren't so obvious to them? Is there certain things or certain patterns you're aware of, or like that someone who's listening right now might not even realize that they're doing and they're doing? I know it depends. But for you, does anything come to mind where you're like, oh, if only more people know about this or had awareness of this? What might that be for you?
Okay. For you and I in the circles that we travel in, I think these two things that I'm going to mention are very familiar, but I don't think they can be over discussed for the general public. And one is that worry really is not serving you.
Yeah.
And that there's, I think, very little actual need for the practice of worrying.
Yeah.
And worry itself tends to take up a lot of brain and body real estate and time then, because we're busy sorting through cycles of worry, patterns of worry, long strings of worry over years. And then what comes of it? Almost nothing, except for wasted time, energy, and increased fear. So the only thing that results are their negative products. And we just want to stay away from things that give us less of a full experience of our range and of our ability and our possibilities. So that is one thing, because of course, as a psychologist, that's what's actually the content is oftentimes very much negativity, pessimism, cynicism, skepticism, self-doubt, very much the negative pool of energy. And I heard the other day on some sort of podcast or social media thing that positive energy and negative energy cannot occupy the same space. And I think I knew that intuitively, but I never heard it articulated in that way. I wish I remembered where I could attribute this to, but that's so important. Let's make our brain space, our mind space, our heart space pure and open and available to the original positivity that we come with, but also to other people's and other inspiration and just all that good stuff, so that we stay away from negative events, pessimism that will just sink our will and our motivation so that we have none. I just feel like worry is not a good thing. The second thing I wanted to share was that we don't have to believe our own thoughts. And I know you believe in that principle, right?
Yeah.
And so luckily I am an argumentative person. Oftentimes I like poking around and seeing how people got to see how they see. And it can be really fun. And we just need to get good at practicing poking holes in our own story, because so much of what we do all day is just cycle through different stories that we've created that are somewhat accidental, somewhat on purpose, but oftentimes just really not necessary or true. So believe very little about what you're feeding yourself. And then the stuff that makes you feel exhilarated and happy and positive and confident, those are the stories you want to stick with, even if you don't quite believe in them yet, where you feel even that they're not true. I want you to head straight for those stories, because they're the future you, and they're the possible you, and they are you.
I love it. So something came up as you're talking about worry around, I just hear someone being like, well, why do I worry so much? I know you probably have so many podcasts, so maybe you can direct them to it if you've already talked about it. But for someone who's thinking like, why do I worry so much? I know that's a very broad, and it can depend on the situation and a lot of things. But in general, is there like a reason potentially why does our brain want to worry so much? Why is it naturally just like look for the worst case scenario? Is there anything you can shed light on to someone who might be asking like, it's so frustrating, but I just don't know why I worry so much? What would you say to that person?
My quick responses are that worry is a habit and worry is a trained habit. And those are, I guess, two separate responses. So the habit is that we develop a cycle of, oh, something's worrisome. We get into a routine of worrying about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we feel, the reward is that we feel like we've taken care of ourselves by being aware of not ignoring it and keeping ourselves safe. And our brain is involved in that. But the fact that we let it occupy so much of our time and brain space can sometimes be training, reinforcement from people around us, early authority figures, schooling, news, and a vibe around us. Even maybe we weren't in safe environments when we were growing up. Even the air that we grow up in can cause an unease. So there are families and homes where you walk in and everything is really light. And there are, of course, others where everything's a little bit fraught. And it's just the intergenerational training of, this is how we raise children. This is how we live together. And oftentimes, again, we can apply these principles that we've talked about in this episode of making things lighter, having things be more fun, not caring so much about every little thing, and going with what feels better. And I feel actually what feels better and what is safe for us oftentimes are exactly the same thing. We're just spending all of our beautiful lifetime, our precious lifetime, worrying about what we don't want. And that is just what I help people not to do.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a big, because it depends on so many things, but something I remember saying a while ago, or like creating a post on, inspired from someone else, was like, very rarely do we go like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I worried so much about this. Our brains want to think of worst case scenarios and go to that thing, but very rarely they actually happen. And then you get to the place and you're like, oh, why did I worry so much about this? Like so it's just kind of, if we can step back and look at it from a perspective of like, how much and how often am I worrying? And are these things actually coming true all the time? Or can I release the hold and the intensity of like worst case scenario that very, very, very rarely happens, and start to redirect the energy, like you said, instead of wasting it to what you said, like what exhilarates you, what lights you up, what do you want? And how can we take that time and energy from worrying about things that don't usually happen to creating what you do want to happen?
Yes. Yeah. So I feel like what we can do with that time is be productive. And I don't mean to indicate that productivity is the altar that we should all be praying to.
Yeah.
But that productivity has a lot of rewards, and a lot of personal growth rewards, social rewards, community rewards, that we can learn more about ourselves through the avenue of productivity. So that tends to be my side focus, and that can be something that can help people find direction for where they're going to take their time, where they're going to use their precious energy. And it, of course, looks differently for different people, but then we get productive people who are feeling well, who are waking every morning feeling like they've got this, they've got things to do. And so to not use productivity as like a burden, but to see it as just an opportunity to thrive and be unique and to express what needs to be expressed. Oftentimes it's releasing something that does want to be seen in the world.
Yeah, I love that. On that note, do you have, I know, again, all these questions are like broad and it's hard to kind of in one, thing, but do you have like a favorite productivity hack or tip for entrepreneurs or your clients you work with that you've seen time and time again work well? I know it depends. I know everyone's different, but is there like something that comes top of mind to you that is one of your favorite productivity hacks?
2 words, act now.
I love it.
So those 2 words are really scary for most entrepreneurs because of all the things that we've talked about, the personal hangups, the personal process, the things that are not worked through, the fear of judgment, fear of waste, fear of coming across a certain way, fear of success. All of that stuff is bundled up into any entrepreneur's brain. You and I both know this well. And from both an entrepreneur side and a coach side. And I think the act now principle really is the cure. The cure is to say, I'm moving forward imperfectly. I'm moving forward now because I want to see what happens when I'm not doubting myself and when I'm trusting myself. I think we haven't used the word trust yet in this conversation, but I have learned that really in my entrepreneurship journey, self-trust is the biggest thing that is going to hold my building that I'm building together. If I don't have that, nothing really works that well. It's going to come out lackluster. I'm going to not send the email. I'm going to not speak with the right energy. And that has been a process because it can be a process to really trust yourself at that level.
Yeah. Can you elaborate or speak more to that? So in my own experience too, that's the biggest thing. It is trusting yourself. And I think from my perspective, just like trusting that I always figure it out and everything always works out. Maybe not how I wanted or how I envisioned, but usually better than I ever could envision. But it is this place where you almost are on like this teeter balance of, that's not even a word. What's the word I'm looking for? A teeter totter where it's like, do I step forward and act now and trust myself that whatever decisions I do make, I will figure out, or I can meet head on and it'll be fine? Or am I stuck in that worry and doubt cycle of like, getting on my, what I say, the invisible dragons hold me back? So for you, can you elaborate a bit more on how someone can start to develop that self-trust? Is there a couple tips or something that you've experienced too that you're like, oh, it depends. And there's obviously a lot more to this, but just someone who's like, what is self-trust? How can I start to develop that even more?
Great questions. This one's a deep one, I think, because the self-trust really is maybe our deepest conflict on some level. That can we feel safe no matter what we're trying, no matter what people are saying, no matter how much it costs, no matter who's looking. That's deep. I think that's like the core of psychology probably. And I would say I've been going through a little bit of that lately because I am trying to up level in terms of just how I'm presenting, how I'm showing up. And I've found myself automatically having to filter through a few things like, well, you don't fit there. This isn't for you. This is going to be costly. This feels scary, and all at once. And I have just, maybe for the first time, actually, after so many years of doing this, feeling like, okay, this is mine to filter through. This is my time to really try this. I've done the podcast, right? How much scarier can it get? And to just know that these are things that I can survive. And I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I have been experiencing this really in the past few days of just considering, can I make it through? And do I back out or do I move forward? And I think my heart's trusting at this point, I'm going to move forward. And so I need to be aware of, what am I saying to myself? What are the old things that are coming back to try to slay me and protect me at the same time? And it's intense, I have to say, because you never remember. First, I never remember that, oh, I go through this every time I try to up level. It's a new experience every time.
Yeah. I think it's beautiful. I think the biggest thing I gather from that is the awareness piece of it, right? Like recognizing when you are up leveling, or recognizing the thoughts that are coming up. And just like you said before, to challenge those thoughts, to question them, to be aware of them and understand, okay, where is potentially this coming from? And then still making a choice. And this goes back to your act now of like, yes, I can be aware of these things and I can still decide to move forward powerfully. But it is this constant inner dialogue with yourself. I find I'm the same. Like there's days where I'm having like 15 plus conversations, like getting me off the edge of just redirecting my attention to what I want, not allowing the thoughts of self-doubt or fear to come up. But again, this just highlights, this happens to everyone. But then when you learn the tools and you have the awareness, you can learn how to self-coach or recognize why it's coming up and what it's actually signifying, and how you can still move forward powerfully towards your goals and not allow the lack of self-trust or the doubts or the fears to hold you back. And I don't think many people realize that. It's like you get to a certain level and it's not there. No. They're all there. It's just, can you learn how to be aware of yourself and apply the tools that you know and still move forward powerfully in spite of that fear, in spite of the stuff that comes up, you know? So I think it's beautiful. Yeah. I think it's a great, yeah.
Can I turn the tables now? Because I'm curious I'm going to ask the same question of you in terms of, was there a pivotal moment in your life where you felt like you could trust yourself in a deeper way, that you knew that the rest of your life was going to not be operating from the same principles as the part before?
There's been a couple. This year, I will say, has been this on steroids for me, like in every area of my life, relationships, where I live, my business, everything. And what's really changed for me was the relationship with myself, to really understand what is noise and what is ego, or what is fears and doubts and other people's perceptions and beliefs and programs, and what is actually my own. And to understand like where the thoughts maybe came from, or where are these fears coming from. And a huge part of that for me was just getting quiet. And I know that's like the lamest thing ever, like, oh, just get quiet. But when you get quiet in that stillness, you actually get to hear what's, for me, like your intuition versus what's the noises. And every time I was able to get quiet, I really just get to hear the noise. The chatter is going to come up first. And then it's like, no, I have this inner knowing, or this feeling, or just trusting myself. Like, even though this decision, which I made lots of them this year, makes no logical sense to anyone else, there's something in me that says still move forward and still make this decision. And so if you aren't in a place where you can really, truly get quiet, or work with someone, or have a coach like challenge your thoughts or challenge your questions, or just hold space for you to just like barf everything out, to really get clear and down to the inner voice of like, what is that inner voice for you? What is the intuition saying to you, despite what everyone says, despite what's around you, despite what logically on paper makes sense, versus like, it's like kind of like many times this year I was on a path, I could go left or I could go right. And right made like, it was safe. I knew it. I could see the path. It was like, made so much logical sense. And then my intuition's like, no, go left. And I couldn't see that path at all, but I just had to trust myself. So there's been many, many, many moments this year especially, but also in the last couple of years, where a huge theme of that is getting to know yourself and recognizing what's the ego voice, what's the fears versus what's my intuition saying to me. And in order for me to listen to my intuition, you have to get quiet. That's just the best and easiest thing that's worked for me. And then I guess I'll end with this too, recognizing that I've always figured it out. Like no matter what I decide, I can always trust that I can decide again. It's not set in stone. I can change my mind. I can always figure it out. It always has worked out. And sometimes in moments of like sheer doubt and like terror of like, I don't know if I can do this, having what I call a badass list, if I'm allowed to swear,
sure,
of the things that you've really done and you've already accomplished and what you've already worked through. Because I find you can add more psychology to this, but your brain's always looking for what's wrong, what's negative. And it very rarely looks for what's right or what's gone well. And so to have a list or a reminder of like all your wins, big or small, your accomplishments, to redirect, hold on, this is actually what I have done. Your brain doesn't want to remember those things. It's like, it's easy to remember the things that went wrong, but not the things that went good. So in those moments of doubt or decision-making, get support around you, get quiet, and remember everything you already have done and what you have figured out. And you always figure it out. That's my tangent. Sorry, I went on a,
No,
big
no,
tangent.
no, no. You answered it beautifully. And I like the badass list. As you said that, I thought to myself, I think I actively try to forget the wins. And I don't know what that is about my brain, but I will very much remember the failures much more readily.
Or the conversation totally.
Yeah. And so I like that idea. I think I might try that one. And I like the support idea, of course, because other people see the growth and enjoy that on our behalf too. So so thank you so much for answering and being willing to
I love the dog.
Oh yeah, and my dog has joined us right now.
People. So if dog comes in, we're like, that's so cute.
We are dog people too.
Yeah, you should. Okay, you have to try that. Oh my gosh, it'd be so fun for you to look back and just, even in a day, of like reflect back on what went well, like conversations or how you handled things. And for some people, it's like, how do I put on it? They don't have to be big accomplishments. They can just be like, I'm really proud of myself for handling that conversation, or being able to shift my state, not letting that one event ruin my whole day. It could be anything, but to reinforce like what's going well, what's working well, what accomplishments you have experienced, big or small, and to look back on that list, especially in times of doubt. You're like, hold on, I'm really good. Whatever, if it's ego boost or not, it's just, again, redirecting your attention. Look what you said, off of wasted energy that does nothing for you, to what can I create? What can I focus on? What have I already done? It just reinforces that confidence and self-trust too. So
yeah, you want to lean towards your goals. You just do.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. For you, can you maybe let me know if there's anything else you want me to hit on? But I'm just curious, like, where do you see yourself? What direction do you see yourself heading in? You kind of alluded to some fun things this last couple of days of you like up leveling. I don't know if you want to share any of that, but like in general, you can ask me this question. I'm like, I don't know. I kind of know, but I can't. I'm not this person who's got this specific dialed down 5-year plan. But for you, where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? What direction are you heading in? What fun goals are you working on? What projects?
Thank you for asking this. This one, I will say, also makes me a little bit nervous, but that's good. Yeah. And I would say from the start of my work online, I've always been interested in reaching as many people as I possibly can. And that wish has not changed through all the ups and downs and all the lessons. So I would say in 5 years, I hope to have bigger reach and to have more people really understanding the things that I've described with you, with your help today, about personal energy and possibility and moving through life with lighter baggage. And that is, I think, definitely my primary career purpose and why. I would say I really enjoy the podcast so much. So if I could do this in some way more often or more easily, or maybe even on different platforms, I would very much be open to that. I think that would have to get worked through, and just reaching different audiences, maybe also. So people who might not be traditionally listening to podcasts or looking for self-development, that maybe going back to university level, going to corporate. I'm open to all things, really. So I'm just excited to see where this goes. And on the personal front, I think health and learning will always be up there, and fun, having more fun, travel, and helping other people to reach their potential is really what is fun. It's also my personal goal. It's just, I do this when I'm not on the podcast and I'm not working. So that is my response there, and probably pick up another puppy.
Don't you get me started. I could have like 10. If I could, I'd have like 10 dogs.
I think I've got one before the end of this year coming.
Oh, that's exciting. What kind of dog? What kind of the same kind of dog or
Rescue. I'm not so sure.
Oh,
We're kind of looking. We're looking right now.
I love it. Okay, last two questions. What are you most proud of?
I am most proud of figuring out self-discipline because this is not a natural, I think, high skill of mine. So I think that has given me the biggest payoff.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that I keep needing to rely on and I keep using to do whatever I feel like is the new thing, whatever I want to explore. Even if it doesn't work out, it's that muscle of showing up, not being afraid, showing up again, doing it even if it hurts, that kind of thing. And having a good attitude about things, which the good attitude I think I come with naturally, but it's that follow through, all that stuff that I've learned and I've enjoyed that I'm very proud of being able to do. And it's so paid off. So
wow. I love it. I love it. Especially because it's like, it's easy to be like self-discipline, what? But it's like what the self-discipline enables you to do. It's everything, right? So it's not just like, oh, just be more, it's like that opens up so many more possibilities and avenues of like, but that's a habit to create too. So that's massive.
Yes.
Okay. What brings you joy? And then I'm going to let you end on whatever else you want your listeners to know about you. But what brings you joy? What exhilarates you?
Joy is puppies, yes. Grown dogs, being able to use time the way I want to. So that sense of time freedom, I just came up with that, but that really is a very core need of mine now and privilege that I enjoy now.
Yeah.
And I just want to give that to our listeners as something that if you don't have that now, that is something you can work towards and develop in your life. Even if it's just for pockets, you want to enjoy that and have those spaces for yourself. So that brings me joy. And then fulfilling my why, seeing people light up, seeing people have easier, happier times every day is a really beautiful thing.
I love it. It's so similar to me too. I love it. I love it. Well, okay. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and opening up and letting me ask you some questions. Is there anything that you feel like hasn't been asked that you'd be like, oh, I really want to get this message out there that would like wrap this episode up with a bow? Anything else you want to share?
I just want to share my gratitude to you, Danya, for being so lovely, so smart, so open and vulnerable too, and for partnering with me on the podcast for 2 episodes, which is such a treat. I want to encourage all of my listeners to follow you, to learn from you, to work with you. Could you please share again how people can do that? I have no more questions. You've done such a beautiful job here. So thank you.
You're so fun. You're so kind. And I likewise, right back at you. Like this is what I love is connecting with, you know what, I'm going to say this, but other women as well in this space, like entrepreneur space, in this personal development space, who are encouraging and a light and expanders in your life. Like I didn't grow up with a lot of, tons of female friends, I would say. There's, we can all open up that kind of worms, but it's when you step into kind of what we talked about, like being authentically who you are and that self-trust and, stepping into arenas where you get to meet other incredible women like yourself. It's just the connections and the bonds and like the learnings from you two is just amazing. So thank you also. It's been so good to get to know you. People can find me mainly on Instagram at Coach Danya. That's where I am. I'll post lots of fun, silly content and serious content. I answer my DMs too though. So that's the easiest place to find me is at Coach Danya on Instagram.
Thank you so much. It has been my pleasure to be interviewed by you. There was no need for me to be nervous. And we both wish our listeners to be free, have fun, and go for it. Go for your big, big vision and dream. Thank you so much, Danya.
Act now, like you said. It's beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been so fun chatting with you.
Thank you. Act now, people. We'll see you next week. Thank you for being here on the Make Time for Success show. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make Time for Success podcast. If you enjoyed what you've heard, you can subscribe to make sure you get notified of upcoming episodes. You can also visit our website, maketimeforsuccesspodcast.com, for past episodes, show notes, and all the resources we mention on the show. Feel free to connect with me over on Instagram too. You can find me there under the name Procrastination Coach. Send me a DM and let me know what your thoughts are about the episodes you've been listening to. And let me know any topics that you might like me to talk about on the show. I'd love to hear all about how you're making time for success. Talk to you soon.